The first sign wasn't the dead. It was the traffic lights. Every intersection on Broad Street went red at the same time. Not cycling, not flickering, just red, all 4 directions, holding. I remember because I was 3 blocks from the on-ramp to I-64 West, and I'd been watching the clock on my dashboard tick past 4:47 p.m. Calculating whether I could still make it to my apartment in Short Pump before the gym closed at 6. That was the size of my concerns. Gym hours. A protein shake timeline. I'm Marcus, 31. Network systems analyst for a mid-size insurance company headquartered in downtown Richmond, Virginia. I tell you that because it matters, not because the job matters, but because it tells you where I was and what I was built for. I was built for sitting, for screens, for solving problems that existed inside wiring closets and server racks. I was not built for what came next. The car ahead of me, a silver Accord with a cracked taillight, honked twice. The driver, a woman in scrubs, probably coming off shift at VCU Medical Center, leaned out her window and looked back toward me like I might have answers. I shrugged. She pulled her head back in. Then the highway signs changed. The digital ones. The overhead boards that usually scroll amber text about construction delays or amber alerts. Every single one I could see, there were 3 from where I sat, went to the same message simultaneously. All routes closed by order of Virginia Department of Emergency Management. Remain in place. Await further instruction. I took a photo of it. I still don't know why. Maybe because my first thought was genuinely that it was a glitch. A test message pushed live by accident. I texted it to my roommate, Dion, with a laughing emoji and wrote, "Somebody's getting fired." Dion didn't reply. I tried the radio. Every FM station was carrying the same emergency alert system tone, that 3-burst pattern that usually precedes tornado warnings. But no voice followed, just the tone, cycling. The woman in the Accord got out of her car entirely. She stood in the middle of the lane, scrubs bright against the gray street, and looked east toward downtown with her hands shading her eyes. Other people were getting out too. Doors opening up and down the corridor of stopped cars. A man in a delivery uniform. A teenager with a skateboard tucked under his arm. An older couple holding hands. We were all looking at each other, which is why almost nobody was looking at the sidewalk when the first one came around the corner of the parking garage on 7th Street. It was a man in a hospital gown. Barefoot. The gown was open in the back, and his skin was the color of dishwater gray-yellow, slick. He was moving wrong. Not limping, not stumbling. Moving like someone who'd forgotten the order of operations for walking. Left arm swinging with the right leg. Head listing to one side like the muscles on that side of his neck had quit. The woman in scrubs saw him first. She said, "Oh, Jesus," very quietly, and started walking toward him with her hands up like she was approaching a confused patient. Professional instinct. She'd probably done this 100 times. Redirected wandering post-ops, calmed disoriented psych admissions. She was 4 feet from him when he opened his mouth, and the sound came out. Not a groan, not a scream. A sound like air being pulled backward through wet gravel. An inverted exhalation. Then he grabbed her wrist and bit through her forearm to the bone. I heard the snap before I heard her scream. Radius or ulna, one of them, broke under the pressure of his jaw. She fell backward, and he went with her, down to the asphalt, his mouth still working. And her screaming turned into something thinner, something that went up in register until it wasn't a scream anymore. It was a sound I'd never heard a human make. I didn't get out of my car. I want to say that clearly, right now, So you know what kind of person was driving that Nissan Altima on Broad Street. I didn't get out. I didn't help. I put my car in reverse and turned my wheel and tried to back out of the lane, and I hit the bumper of the car behind me, and my hands were shaking so badly I ground the transmission trying to find drive again. The delivery driver ran. The teenager ran. The older couple got back in their car, and the man locked the doors. I could hear the chunk of the locks engaging from 15 feet away. The thing in the hospital gown was still on top of the woman in scrubs. And from the parking garage behind him, 3 more were coming out. Same gate, same color, same wrongness. I finally found drive. I jumped the curb, took out a parking meter, and went the wrong way up a one-way street at 40 miles an hour. That was 4:52 p.m. The highways had been closed since approximately 1:45 p.m. 3 hours of warning that nobody gave us in language we understood. I made it 6 blocks before the streets became impassable. Not because of the infected, not yet. Because of us. Every vehicle in the downtown core had the same idea at the same time: leave. But every road out was barricaded. I couldn't see the barricades themselves from where I was. But I could see their effect, a static mass of vehicles in every direction that faced away from the city center. The grid was seized. Arteries clotted with metal and panic. I abandoned the Altima on Franklin Street, took my laptop bag from the passenger seat, reflex, completely useless, and started moving on foot. I had no plan. I had no destination. I just knew that being in a stationary car felt like being in a coffin with windows. The sidewalks were filling with people doing the same calculation. Some were running. Some were walking fast with their phones pressed to their ears, talking to people who I suspect were not answering. A woman pushed a stroller at a near sprint. The baby inside silent, with wide eyes. A group of college-aged kids moved in a cluster, one of them filming everything on his phone, narrating to an audience that probably couldn't load his stream. I heard the first siren. Then 6 more, overlapping, coming from the direction of the medical center. Then a sound I'd never heard in a city, a deep mechanical drone, rhythmic, getting louder. Helicopter. Military, not news. The silhouette was wrong when it passed overhead. Black Hawk or something close to it. It wasn't stopping. It was heading south, away from us. My phone buzzed. Not Dion, my mother, calling from her house in Newport News. I answered while walking. Marcus, where are you? Downtown. Mom, I can't. They're saying on the news not to leave your house. They're saying there's a contamination event. I'm not in my house. I'm in the street. Mom, I saw. Your father's trying to reach your sister. She's not picking up. Marcus, what's happening? I don't know. I have to go. I love you. Marcus. I hung up. That conversation is a wound I carry. The efficiency of it. The way I cut her off. I think about her voice, the rising panic in it. And I think about how I'll never know if that was the last time I could have told her something that mattered. I was on 5th Street, heading north toward Jackson Ward, when I encountered the first group that had organized. 6 people, all adults, standing at the entrance to an office building, a glass-fronted insurance building, 4 stories. One of them had propped the door open and was waving people in. Get inside, off the street. They're coming up from Shockoe Bottom. I looked south. 3 blocks away, maybe 4, I could see movement that wasn't running away movement. It was slow. It was spreading. A tide of wrong-moving bodies pouring out from the direction of the hospitals and the homeless shelters near the river, wherever the first infections had seeded. I went inside. The man holding the door was named Ray. Big guy, mid-40s, wearing a security guard uniform for the building. He'd been on shift when the alerts hit and had simply never left. With him were two women from the accounting firm. On the second floor, Priya and Elena, a bike messenger named Cole who'd been mid-delivery, and an older man in a suit who never gave his name and didn't speak for the first 3 hours we knew him. Ray locked the glass doors and pulled the security gate across the latticed metal barrier that was designed to stop after-hours break-ins. He stepped back and looked at it and said, "That's not going to hold for shit, is it?" Nobody answered him because we all knew. Glass front, ground floor, street-level access on 2 sides. This was not a fortress. This was a fishbowl. "Upstairs," Priya said. She was already moving toward the stairwell. We go up. We pull the stairwell doors shut. We figure it out from there. It wasn't a plan. It was the only direction that made sense. We went up. The 4th floor of the building was a small law office empty. Everyone had left early or never come in. We locked the stairwell door, which was solid metal with a crash bar, and stood in the darkened office space, breathing hard and listening. Below us, through the floor, we could hear the street changing. The sound of car horns had stopped. That was what struck me first, the absence of honking. What replaced it was worse. Footsteps. Not the scattered rhythm of running people. A constant, arrhythmic shuffle. Hundreds of feet moving without coordination. Cole went to the window. He was 23, maybe 24. Lean, messenger fit, with a bike chain still looped over his shoulder like he'd forgotten it was there. He looked down and then stepped back fast enough to bump into Elena. "Don't look," he said. I looked. Broad Street, 4 stories below, was full. Not full the way a protest fills a street or a marathon fills a road. Full the way water fills a pipe edge to edge, moving in one direction but with eddies, with backflows, with bodies pressing against glass storefronts and spilling into alleys. Dozens, maybe 200 visible from this window alone. All moving with that broken gait. All silent except for the shuffle of bare and shod feet. Among them, I could see the ones who'd been caught in transit. A woman in a business suit, her blouse torn open, her chest marked with dark bite impressions. A man still wearing a bicycle helmet, one arm hanging at an angle that meant the shoulder was dislocated or the joint was simply no longer operating under structural rules. A child, maybe 10, in a school uniform. I stepped back from the window. "How many people live in downtown Richmond?" Elena asked. She was standing with her arms crossed, her voice very controlled. Accountants' discipline quantify the problem. "In the immediate downtown core?" Priya said. "Maybe 15,000, 20,000. But during work hours, it's more like 80 with commuters." "And the hospitals," Ray added. "VCU Medical alone has what, 900 beds? Plus staff?" We stood with that number. 900 beds full of people already vulnerable. Already connected to IVs, already immobile, already surrounded by other bodies in close quarters. If whatever this was started there or reached there early, it would be like dropping a match in kindling. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Dion. His text read, "Bro, where are you? I'm at the apartment. Something is wrong with the neighbors. I can hear them in the hallway. They're not talking, just moving around. Doors are locked. What do I do?" I typed back, "Stay inside. Don't open the door. Barricade if you can. I'm stuck downtown." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Marcus, I can hear them trying the doorknobs." I stared at that message. Dion was 12 miles west of me. Whatever this was, it wasn't contained to downtown. The highway closures hadn't kept it in. They'd kept us in with it. I don't know what to tell you, I typed. Then I deleted it. I typed, push the couch against the door. Fill the bathtub with water. I'm going to find a way out. I was lying. I had no idea how to find a way out. But it was something to say. Something that sounded like a plan. Dion's last message came through at 5:31 p.m. Okay, be safe, bro. I never heard from him again. By nightfall, there were 11 of us on the 4th floor. The additions came in a rush around 6 p.m. when a group from the parking garage next door managed to cross via a 3rd-floor sky bridge that connected the buildings. 5 people, a young couple named Sean and Britt, a middle-aged man named Wallace who worked at the DMV 2 blocks away, and 2 women who'd been in the parking garage stairwell together. Tamara, a paralegal, and Mrs. Okafor, who was 67 and had been visiting her son's office when the world changed. Mrs. Okafor was the one who told us the military barricades were on the highways only. The side streets, she said, sitting in a rolling office chair and pressing her hand to her chest to slow her breathing. The side streets are just blocked with cars, not barricades, people trying to leave. But the police, they pushed everyone back. They said it was a quarantine. They said help was coming. When? Ray asked. They didn't say when. They just said stay indoors. Cole was at the window again, despite his own advice. The shuffling mass below had thinned slightly. Many had drifted south toward the river or east toward Church Hill. But there were still dozens visible. And in the growing dark, they were harder to track. Just shapes. Movement patterns that didn't match anything living. The lights are still on, Priya observed. She was right. Street lights, building lights, the glow from storefronts, all still functioning. The grid was holding. That felt significant. It meant the infrastructure wasn't gone. Somewhere, systems were still being maintained. Someone was still at a control panel. How long do we stay here? Sean asked. He was holding Britt's hand. They couldn't have been older than 25. He had a gym bag slung across his chest, and she was wearing workout clothes, lycra leggings, a tank top. They'd been heading to their car after a class at the YMCA. Until they come get us, Ray said. He said it with the certainty of a man in uniform, even if that uniform was just a security guard's polo. They close the highways. That means they know. That means they're setting up response. I wanted to believe him. Every rational framework I had, every experience of government functioning at any level told me that when you see military helicopters and highway closures, you see organized response within hours, days at most. But Dion's last message sat in my phone like a stone. We divided the floor. The law office had a small kitchen sink, microwave, mini fridge with someone's lunch, and a 6-pack of La Croix. There was a water cooler, 3/4 full. A vending machine down one floor in the stairwell landing that Wallace volunteered to raid. He came back with armfuls of chips, candy bars, crackers, not much. Maybe 2 days for 11 people if we stretched it. Nobody slept the first night. We sat in the dark. We turned off the interior lights. After Cole pointed out that backlit windows would draw attention from below, and we listened. The building creaked. The stairwell door held. Somewhere below us, maybe 2nd floor, we heard glass break around 2 a.m. A crash, then silence. Then shuffling on the floor beneath us. They're inside, Elena whispered. Ray stood up. He had a fire extinguisher he'd taken off the wall and a letter opener from one of the desks. The stairwell door is steel, he said. They'd have to know how to work a crash bar to get through. Do they know how to work things? Britt asked. Nobody had an answer. We'd seen them grab. We'd seen them bite. We hadn't tested their capacity for mechanism, for doors, for stairs. At 2:47 a.m., something hit the stairwell door from the other side. A single impact, dull and heavy. Then nothing. At 3:15, 3 impacts in succession. Faster, like testing. At 4:02, steady rhythmic pounding that lasted 11 minutes. I counted. Then it stopped. And the worst part, worse than the pounding, was not knowing why it stopped. Whether they'd lost interest. Whether they'd found another way. I sat against the wall with my dead phone. It had died at midnight. No charger, and thought about Dion pushing a couch against a door 12 miles away. I thought about my mother calling my sister who wasn't picking up. I thought about the woman in scrubs on Broad Street, the snap of bone, the way I'd put my car in reverse instead of getting out. Priya sat beside me at some point. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "I have a daughter. She's 7. She's with my mother in Chesterfield." I didn't know what to say to that. Chesterfield was south of the river, outside the apparent quarantine. Maybe safe, maybe not. "I have to get to her," Priya said. Not to me specifically. To the darkness. To whoever would listen. "We'll find a way," I said. Another lie. But the same kind Dion believed from me. The kind that keeps you sitting upright through a night that has no bottom. Dawn came slow and gray, overcast. September in Richmond means humid mornings, and the condensation on the windows blurred the street below into something almost gentle. Almost. Ray had taken inventory while most of us dozed in shifts. He laid it out on the reception desk. 14 bottles of water from the cooler, the vending machine haul, 3 apples from the fridge, someone's forgotten bag of trail mix, and 2 cans of Coke. He'd also found a first aid kit in the kitchen, a box cutter in a desk drawer, and a hammer from a framed photo he'd taken off the wall. "Today we need to figure out 3 things," he said. He held up fingers. 1. Are they still on the lower floors? 2. Is there another way out of this building that doesn't go through the lobby? 3. Does anybody have a working phone? Sean had a charger that fit Britt's phone, and they'd found an outlet that still worked. Britt's phone showed 1 bar of signal, intermittent. She'd been trying to reach her mother in Ashland since 5 a.m. with no connection. The network was either overloaded or damaged. "The Sky Bridge," Wallace said. He'd been quiet all night, a heavy-set man with a bureaucrat's patience, the kind of person who'd stood in line his whole career and could endure stasis better than the rest of us. "We came from the parking garage. If the garage connects to the street on the other side, west side, maybe that street is clearer." "I looked last night," Cole said. "West side faces an alley. The alley connects to Adams Street. Adams was less packed than Broad when things went bad. Might be a way." "Might be," Ray repeated. "Or might be full of them funneled into a narrow space." The argument that followed was our first real fracture. Not violent, no one raised a voice. But the positions hardened fast. Ray wanted to stay, wait for rescue. The building was holding, the stairwell door was steel, and the pounding had stopped. Help would come. It always came. Priya wanted to move. Every hour in this building was an hour farther from her daughter. The vending machine food wouldn't last 2 days. If we didn't move while we still had energy and daylight, we'd be weaker tomorrow. Cole sided with Priya. Sean and Britt with Ray. They were scared, and scared people want walls. Wallace was undecided. Elena was undecided. Mrs. Okafor said she'd go wherever the group went, but couldn't move fast. Tamara said nothing but kept looking at the stairwell door. The man in the suit, we'd started calling him Suit because he never offered anything else, finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been screaming before we met him and had nothing left. I was in the lobby when the first ones came through the glass. 7 people died in front of me in under a minute. They don't just bite, they swarm. If there's more than 3 in a space, you do not go through that space. You find another space. That is the only rule that matters. Silence. How many were on the street yesterday? Elena asked. Hundreds, Cole said. Then we don't go to the street, Suit said. We go across, building to building. Roof to roof if we have to. Stay above them. Never go down to their level. It wasn't a plan. It was a principle. But it was the first thing anyone had said that didn't feel like either paralysis or suicide. Stay above. Move lateral. Don't descend into the current. Ray exhaled hard through his nose. Fine. We scout. Cole and I go through the sky bridge to the garage, see what the west side looks like from elevation. Everyone else stays here, door locked, silent. If we're not back in an hour, don't come looking. I'm coming, I said. I said it before I thought about it. I think I needed to stop being the person who put his car in reverse. I think I needed to move towards something instead of away. Ray looked at me, assessed, nodded. You got quiet shoes? I looked down at my office loafers. Leather soled. Would click on concrete. Cole took off his Vans and slid them across the floor to me. I've got bike cleats in my bag. They grip better anyway. I put on a stranger's shoes. They were half a size too small. They smelled like sweat and chain oil. We went through the sky bridge at 7:14 a.m. The parking garage on the other side was silent. Concrete and shadow and the smell of exhaust ghosts. Our footsteps echoed no matter how carefully we placed them. The ramp spiraled down. We didn't go down. We went up to the roof. From the top of the parking garage, 6 stories up, Richmond spread out in every direction under a gray-white sky. And it was wrong. All of it. The streets weren't empty, they were populated. But with the wrong kind of movement. Slow drifters. Clusters of them gathered around certain points. A crashed bus on Marshall Street, a pileup at the 3rd Street intersection. The entrance to the convention center where bodies were thickest. Feeding sites, I'd realize later. Places where living people had been caught and overwhelmed. And the infected returned to like animals, returned to a kill. But between those clusters, there were gaps. Corridors of relative emptiness. Adams Street, as Cole had guessed, was thinner. 1 or 2 visible, moving east. The alley below us held nobody. And to the west, past the next block of buildings, I could see a section of Belvedere Street that looked almost normal. No movement, no bodies, just stopped cars and silence. There, Cole said, pointing. Belvedere to the boulevard. The boulevard connects to the residential neighborhoods. If we can get past Belvedere, we're out of the downtown grid. That's 4 blocks, Ray said. 4 blocks at street level. 3 if we cut through the Altria building. It has a sky bridge to the parking deck on Belvedere. You know this building? I delivered there every day for 2 years. Ray looked at me. I looked at the street below. 3 infected visible on our target route. 3 that we could see. In 4 blocks. With 11 people, one of whom was 67, and one of whom hadn't spoken in 12 hours. We can't take everyone through that, I said. Then what? Cole asked. We take whoever can move fast. We find clear ground. We come back for the others. I heard those words come out of me, and I felt the shape of them, the clean geometry of triage. Leave the slow ones behind. Come back later. Except later was a concept that assumed the building would hold, assumed the stairwell door wouldn't give, assumed the rescue Ray believed in wouldn't arrive and render the whole question moot. No, Ray said. Everybody moves together or nobody moves. That's a death sentence for the fast ones, Cole said. Leaving people behind is a death sentence for the slow ones. The building might hold, and it might not. You heard them on the stairwell door last night. That was what, 3 of them? 4? What happens when 50 press against it? We stood on the roof of a parking garage and argued about who was expendable. That's the truth of it. That's what survival sounds like when the theory becomes personnel. Not resources, not routes. People. Specific people with names we'd learned 12 hours ago and faces we'd seen in the dark. Cole turned away and gripped the concrete barrier at the roof's edge. He was vibrating with the need to move. 23 years old, messenger fit, bike chain over his shoulder. His entire body was built for speed and freedom, and he was caged on a rooftop arguing about pace. Let's ask them, I said. All of them. We go back, we lay it out what we saw, what the options are. We let people decide for themselves. Ray considered this. It went against his instinct. He was a gatekeeper by profession, a man who decided who entered and who waited. But he nodded. Fair, he said. We went back. The decision took 20 minutes. It split us. I laid out what we'd seen. The gap on Adams, the alley route to the Sky Bridge, the clear stretch on Belvedere. Cole drew a map on a legal pad. Ray gave the counterargument: stay, conserve, wait for organized rescue. Priya was first. I'm going. Cole, going. Me, going. Wallace looked at the map for a long time. He was a big man, not fast, but his eyes tracked the route with a strategist's focus. If I slow you down, he said, you leave me. No argument, no guilt. You leave me and you keep going. Wallace, I'm serious. That's my condition. Sean and Britt chose to stay. They were holding hands, their decision already made in the language of their gripped fingers. Ray chose to stay with them. He wouldn't leave people in his building. Elena and Tamara chose to stay. Mrs. Okafor couldn't make the distance, and she knew it, and she said so without self-pity. Just fact. My knees, she said. 3 blocks might as well be 3 miles. Suit stood up. He buttoned his jacket, a gesture so absurd in context that it made Cole bark a short laugh. I'm going, Suit said. My name is Gerald, in case it matters later. So we were 6 who moved and 5 who stayed. Ray shook each of our hands. When he shook mine, he held my grip an extra second. Come back for us, he said. We will. I don't know if that was a lie. I think it was an intention, which isn't the same thing as a promise, but feels like one in the moment. We left through the Sky Bridge at 9:40 a.m. The parking garage was still empty, upper levels at least. Cole led. I was second. Then Priya, then Gerald, then Wallace in the rear. We moved in single file along the interior wall, where our bodies wouldn't silhouette against the open sides of the garage. Down 1 ramp, 2. At the 3rd level, Cole stopped and held up a fist, a gesture so military that I wondered where he'd learned it. Delivery routes or video games. Either way, we all stopped. Below us, on level 2, an infected woman was walking in circles around a concrete pillar. Literally circles the same path, over and over, her feet tracing a ring maybe 10 feet in diameter. Her head was tilted up, mouth open, and she was making a sound like a sustained exhale. Not aggressive, not hunting, just looping, stuck in a pattern with no stimulus to break it. Cole gestured, go around wide. We pressed against the far wall, 20 feet from her orbit. My borrowed shoes were silent on the concrete. Wallace's dress shoes clicked once, and the woman's head snapped toward the sound. She didn't attack. She stared. Her eyes, I could see them now. In the fluorescent garage lighting, were wrong. Clouded, but not blind. Tracking. She tracked Wallace for 3 full seconds and then resumed her circle. We kept moving. Nobody breathed until we reached the ramp down to level 1, and even then it was shallow, controlled, like we'd collectively decided that air itself was dangerous. Level 1 opened onto the alley. Cole went to the exit first, pressed against the wall, and looked both directions. Clear left, right one, maybe 60 yards down, facing away. We go left. Left took us to Adams Street. The alley mouth opened onto a narrow road lined with the backs of restaurants and a service entrance for a hotel. One infected visible, a block east, moving away from us. The rest of Adams stretched empty toward the Altria building's south entrance. We crossed. Single file. Fast walk, not running, Cole had insisted. Running draws them. Sound and motion. Walk fast, stay tight, stay quiet. The Altria building's south entrance was a revolving door. Locked. Beside it, a standard door, also locked. Cole produced a bike tool from his bag and worked at the lock for 30 seconds before Wallace simply put his shoulder into the frame and the thing splintered inward. The sound was loud. We all flinched. Priya grabbed my arm. 60 yards down Adams, the infected that had been moving away stopped, turned, started walking toward the sound. Inside, Cole hissed, now. We went through the broken door into the dark lobby of the Altria building, and Gerald pulled it shut behind us. Through the glass, I watched the infected on Adams accelerate. Not to a run, but to a walk that was faster, more directed, purposeful. It had heard. It was coming to investigate. We didn't wait to see if it could work a broken door. We moved into the lobby, past the security desk, and found the elevator bank. Dead. Emergency stairwell. Up. The sky bridge to the Belvedere parking deck was on the 3rd floor. Cole knew exactly where it was. We reached it in under 2 minutes, pushed through a door marked Authorized Personnel, and stepped onto the enclosed walkway, glass-walled, spanning the gap between buildings like a transparent throat. And we stopped. Because on Belvedere Street below us, clearly visible through the glass floor-to-ceiling walls of the sky bridge, a military convoy was moving. 3 Humvees and a truck. Slow, deliberate. Heading north. Hey! Wallace slammed his palm against the glass. Hey, up here! The glass was thick, office grade, sound dampening. The convoy was 4 stories below, and the vehicles were buttoned up, doors shut, windows covered. They didn't stop. They didn't look up. Wallace hit the glass again. Priya was waving both arms. Gerald pressed his face against the pane and watched the convoy pass beneath us and continue north on Belvedere until the truck disappeared around the curve. They're clearing a route, Cole said quietly. Look. He was right. Behind the convoy, in its wake, Belvedere was empty. The infected that had been there, however many, had been pushed aside or cleared. The street was open. For how long? I asked. Not long. They come back. They always fill back in. Then we go now. Right now. Down through the parking deck, onto Belvedere, and west before they fill in again. This was the logic. Clean logic. Obvious. We had a window, a literal cleared corridor, and it was closing with every second we spent watching it from above. We moved through the parking deck fast. No stealth now, just speed. Down the ramp spiral, our footsteps echoing, the sound of our breathing amplified by concrete. Level 3, clear. Level 2, 1 infected. Near the exit, an elderly man in pajamas who turned toward us and started his approach. Cole didn't slow down. He swung the bike chain off his shoulder and snapped it across the thing's face as he passed. The impact twisted its head sideways and it staggered into the wall. We were past it before it recovered. Ground level. The exit gate was up. The convoy had come through here, or the gate had been raised by some automated system. Daylight, street, open. Belvedere stretched in front of us, wide and empty. Abandoned cars sat at angles. Doors open, engines off. Some had blood on the seats visible through open doors. One had a child's car seat in the back, the straps dangling unfastened. West, Priya said. She was already moving. The boulevard is 4 blocks. We moved. Fast walk, almost jogging. The silence was immense. No engine noise, no voices. Just our footsteps, and distantly, the thrum of the military vehicles already blocks away. A dog barked somewhere, a normal sound that felt abnormal in its loneliness. 2 blocks in, Gerald stopped. He was looking at a body on the sidewalk. Not infected, truly dead. A man in running clothes, face down, with a hole in his back that wasn't a bite. It was a bullet wound. Clean, center mass. They're shooting people, Gerald said. They're shooting infected, Cole corrected. Are they checking first? Nobody answered. We kept moving. But the question lodged. The military was here. The military was clearing routes. The military was also, potentially, not distinguishing between the running from and the running toward. In a quarantine zone, maybe everyone moving was a target. At the intersection of Belvedere and Main, we saw the first barricade up close. Jersey barriers, concertina wire on top, a Humvee parked sideways behind it. No soldiers visible, they'd moved on with the convoy. The barricade faced south, blocking traffic from entering the highway on-ramp. It wasn't designed to keep us on this side. It was designed to keep something from getting to the highway. We could walk around it on the sidewalk, past the barricade. The world changed. Not immediately, but within a block, the density of abandoned vehicles decreased. Windows were intact. No blood, no bodies. The infection's tide had reached this far and receded, or hadn't reached this far at all. This is it, Cole said. Past the boulevard, it's residential. Houses, yards, fences, not the open grid. Is that better or worse? Priya asked. Better for hiding, worse for seeing them coming. Wallace was breathing hard. His face was red and his shirt was soaked through. But he was keeping pace. He caught my eye and shook his head slightly. Don't ask. Don't slow down for me. We crossed the boulevard, a wide tree-lined street that felt almost normal in its suburban quiet, and entered the Fan District. Narrow row houses, porches, iron railings, cars parked on narrow streets with no gaps between them. A neighborhood, a real one. And on the corner of Boulevard and Park Avenue, 2 people were standing on a second-floor balcony watching us approach. Living people, a man and a woman. The man was holding a hunting rifle. Stop there, he called down. Are any of you bit? No, I said. I said it too fast. The man's eyes pale, sharp, visible even from the street, narrowed. Show your arms, necks, all of you. We showed. Arms out, sleeves rolled. Priya pulled her collar down. Gerald unbuttoned his shirt to the chest. Wallace turned in a slow circle, his bulk exposed and vulnerable under the man's rifle barrel. All right, the man said. His voice softened 1 degree. There's 12 of us in here. 2 houses connected through the basement. We can't take more. We don't need to stay, Cole said. We need information. What's west of here? Is there a way out of the city? The woman leaned forward. She was mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, arms crossed. There's nothing west you want to reach on foot. The suburbs are worse than downtown. Worse how? More spread out, more of them in the open, fewer tall buildings to get above them. We had a group try to walk to Short Pump yesterday, 6 people. 2 made it back. They said it's everywhere, the whole county. I thought of Dion. Short Pump, our apartment. Pushed the couch against the door. What about south? Priya asked. Across the river? Bridges are blown, the man said. Or barricaded. Manchester Bridge, Mayo Bridge military dropped the center span on the Lee Bridge last night. Heard the explosion around midnight. They collapsed a bridge? Containment. They're trying to keep it north of the river. Priya made a sound small, involuntary. Chesterfield was south of the river. Her daughter was south of the river. And the bridges were gone. There's got to be another way across, she said. Her voice was tight now, controlled but vibrating at the edges. A boat. A something. The woman shook her head. Rivers being patrolled. Military boats. They're shooting anything that tries to cross. A guy with a kayak tried yesterday morning. They put 3 rounds in the water next to him and he came back. The quarantine wasn't just keeping the infected in. It was keeping all of us in. Every living person trapped inside the cordon was as contained as the dead. Cole pulled me aside while Priya argued with the balcony couple about alternative crossing points. His face was set in that focused way, the expression of someone processing a route, calculating options. We can't go west, can't go south. North is the highway blockade that's locked tight. East is downtown, which is where we just left. He paused. We're boxed in. So what do? We find a way to survive inside the box until the box opens, or we find a hole in the box nobody's watching. You think there's a hole? There's always a hole. The question is whether we find it before we starve or get caught in the open. Gerald appeared beside us. He'd buttoned his shirt back up, straightened his tie. The man says there's a group organizing at the Science Museum, 3 blocks north. People with supplies. Some kind of coordination. How many? He said 40. Maybe more by now. 40 people. The number felt simultaneously huge. 40 mouths, 40 panicking minds, and small. 40 against a city of infected that might number in the tens of thousands. Do we go? I asked. Cole looked at Priya. She was still at the base of the balcony, her head tilted up, asking about the river, about boats, about any gap in the military line. Her desperation was becoming visible, the edges of her composure fraying in real time. She needs a plan, Cole said. Even a bad one. If she doesn't have a direction, she's going to break. He was right. I'd seen it in myself the day before, the paralysis of no exit, the mind cycling on the same locked doors until it overheats. What saves you isn't a solution. It's motion. Even motion toward something uncertain. The museum, I said. If there's 40 people organized, they might have information we don't. They might know about the river, about gaps. Wallace joined us, wiping his face with his sleeve. I'll slow you down less if I can eat something first, he said. Practical, no self-pity, just the fact of his body and its needs. We shared the last of the trail mix from my laptop bag, a handful each. Not enough to matter nutritionally, but enough to remind our bodies that food existed, that someone was still in charge of feeding them. Then we moved north, toward the museum, toward 40 strangers, toward whatever coordination looked like on the second day of the end of a city. The Science Museum of Virginia sits on Broad Street, the same Broad Street I'd fled the day before, but a mile west of the downtown core. It's a domed building, old, brick and stone, built to look permanent. The kind of architecture that suggests nothing inside it could be temporary or fragile. The front was barricaded, not improvised, deliberately constructed. Cars had been rolled bumper to bumper across the entrance road. Behind them, furniture from inside the museum formed a second layer. On the roof, two figures with binoculars tracked our approach for the full block before we reached the perimeter. A voice from behind the car wall. Hands visible. Walk straight toward me. How many infected did you pass? None on this approach, Cole answered. Where are you coming from? Downtown, Broad and 7th. Left this morning. A pause. Then, come around to the east side. Loading dock. We'll open. The loading dock was a steel roll-up door at the back of the building, partially raised enough to duck under, not enough to stand through. A man in his 50s with a gray beard and a Richmond Fire Department t-shirt met us on the other side. He looked each of us over, asked again about bites, and waved us into the service corridor. Hank, he said by way of introduction. I'm not in charge. Nobody's in charge. But I'm the one who answers the door. The interior of the museum had been transformed. The exhibit halls, normally full of interactive science displays and school groups, were now sectioned into zones. Sleeping area in the planetarium, where the curved walls and domed ceiling made the dark feel contained rather than empty. Food storage in the gift shop. Medical in the butterfly exhibit the glass cases repurposed as supply shelves. And people. Not 40, I counted closer to 60, with more arriving throughout the day. Families, singles, a youth soccer team that had been at practice when their coach saw the first infected on the adjacent field. A pair of nurses from the VA hospital who'd fled when their ward was overrun. An off-duty cop named Lewis who still had his service weapon and hadn't fired it yet and kept touching the holster like a rosary. Priya found the nurses immediately. The James River, she said. Is there any crossing that isn't being watched? The older nurse, a woman named Claudia with steady hands, and a voice like someone who'd delivered bad news professionally for decades, looked at Priya with compassion that was worse than refusal. Honey, the river is patrolled bank to bank. I watched them shoot at a family on a pool float this morning from the hospital window. Not at them exactly in front of them. Warning shots. But they turned back. My daughter is on the other side. A lot of people's everything is on the other side. That's by design. Claudia explained what the nurses had gathered from radio chatter before the VA hospital fell. The quarantine perimeter ran along the river to the south, the highway system to the north and west, and the military installations to the east. Everything inside was designated a hot zone. The strategy, as far as they could determine, was containment and let the infected burn through the living population inside the perimeter, then sweep and clear once movement stopped. They're going to let us die, Wallace said. He said it flat, not with outrage. With the same tone he probably used at the DMV when a form was filled out incorrectly. Factual, administrative. They're going to let the infection exhaust itself, Claudia corrected. They can't cure it. They can't treat it. All they can do is keep it from spreading. So they contain it, and they wait. And we're inside the container. Yes. The room we were in, a former classroom off the main hall, held about 15 people during this conversation. The silence after Claudia's explanation was the densest silence I'd experienced. Not shocked silence, processing silence. The silence of people recalibrating their understanding of where they stood in the priority structure of their own government. I was inside a container. The container had been sealed 3 hours before I knew it needed to be sealed. And the people who sealed it had no intention of opening it until everything inside was either dead or no longer infectious. Cole sat on the edge of a display case about volcanoes and said very quietly, "Then we survive long enough to be a problem they have to solve." Day 3, Day 4. The museum became its own kind of city. Not because it was organized, it was, but loosely, constantly arguing with itself about hierarchy and resource allocation. It became a city because it developed the features cities develop: neighborhoods, economies, grudges, alliances, and a power structure that nobody voted for, but everyone tacitly acknowledged. Hank ran the door. Lewis, the off-duty cop, ran security, which meant he carried the only firearm and decided when it was appropriate to use it. Never so far, though he'd drawn it twice when arguments escalated. Claudia and the other nurse, a younger man named James, ran medical. A retired high school principal named Dorothy somehow ended up running food distribution with the quiet authority of a woman who'd managed lunch periods for 600 teenagers. I became infrastructure. It happened almost accidentally. Someone asked if anyone knew anything about the building's electrical system on Day 2. And I said I was a network analyst, which isn't the same thing at all, but it was close enough to knows about wires that I got handed the job. I traced circuits, found the backup generator in the basement, calculated fuel consumption, gave the group an honest estimate: 8 days of power at minimal usage. Less if we ran the HVAC. Cole became a scout. He went out every day at first light with 1 or 2 volunteers, mapping the surrounding blocks, tracking infected movement patterns, cataloging resources in nearby buildings. He came back with food, water, batteries, and intelligence. The infected were densest to the east downtown and thinnest to the west in the residential neighborhoods. But they were everywhere. There was no direction you could walk for more than 4 blocks without encountering at least one. Their behavior, we learned, was not uniform. Some clustered, some wandered alone. Some stood motionless for hours, then responded to sound with frightening speed. Some were fast the freshly turned, still carrying the physical capacity of whatever body they'd inhabited. Some were slow damaged, degraded, missing pieces. All of them responded to noise. All of them responded to visible movement at close range. None of them responded to smell, as far as we could tell. None of them operated doors, though they could push through unlocked ones. On Day 4, Cole reported something new. "They're thinning," he said at the evening meeting. We gathered in the planetarium, 68 people under a dome that used to project constellations. West side, around Malvern and Meadow. I walked 6 blocks and saw 3. Yesterday it was 8 on the same route. "Where are they going?" Lewis asked. "East, toward downtown. I think they're drawn to density. Sound carries further downtown echoes off the buildings. More of them in one place means more ambient noise, which draws more." "So they're pooling," Hank said. "Yeah, pooling downtown, which means the perimeter, the residential edge, is getting less dangerous." "Less dangerous isn't safe," Lewis said. "Nothing's safe. But less dangerous is something we can work with." Priya had been quiet for days. She went through the motions, helped Dorothy with food, took a watch shift at night, but her eyes had gone somewhere else. Somewhere south of the river where a 7-year-old girl was with her grandmother and the bridges were collapsed, and the military shot at anything that tried to cross. I found her on the roof on Day 4 evening, sitting against the dome base, looking south. The river was visible from here, a dark ribbon between the city and the safety on its other side. Occasional helicopter lights moved along its length. "I'm going to try," she said when I sat next to her. "The river?" "Cole says the west side is thinning. If I go far enough west past Huguenot, past the county line, maybe the patrol is thinner too." Maybe there's a place they can't watch? That's 10 miles of walking through territory we haven't scouted. I know. Alone? Unless someone comes with me. I looked south with her. The river, the other side. Her daughter's name was Anaya. She'd told me that on the first night, in the dark of the law office on the 4th floor. She'd said her name like speaking it could keep her safe. I can't go with you, I said. I'm sorry. The words were true and they were a failure, and they were both of those things at the same time. I couldn't go. I was maintaining the generator. I was mapping circuits. 68 people needed power for 8 more days, and I was the one keeping it running. If I left, the lights went out sooner. I know, she said again. I'm not asking. When? Tomorrow morning, before light. Cole will have route information. Talk to him tonight. She nodded. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, You remember what you said to me? In the office? That first night? I said we'd find a way. You meant it when you said it. I did. That's enough. She stood. That's more than most people gave me. She left before dawn on day 5. Cole gave her a map he'd hand-drawn of the western routes, marked with danger zones and cleared paths. Wallace gave her his jacket. It was getting cold at night. I gave her the external battery pack from my laptop bag, which she could use to keep a phone alive if she found signal. She walked south and west in the dark, and the 67 of us remaining watched from the roof as her silhouette disappeared into the residential grid. I never learned if she made it. Day 7 broke the museum. Not physically, the building held, but what broke was the consensus. The agreement that we were all in this together, sharing equally, surviving collectively. It started with food. Dorothy's rationing had been fair but brutal, 800 calories per person per day, calculated from the dwindling supplies Cole's scouting runs brought back. Enough to keep you functioning. Not enough to stop the headaches, the irritability, the slow erosion of patience. A group of 5 men younger, stronger, led by a former personal trainer named Keith, had been going on their own runs without coordinating with Cole. They'd found a restaurant supply warehouse 3 blocks north with a locked cold room. Rather than reporting it to the group, they'd been eating from it privately for 2 days. When Dorothy found out, James the nurse noticed Keith's energy level and tracked him. The confrontation happened in the main hall in front of everyone. Lewis was there with his hand on his holster. You've been eating while rationing the rest of us? Dorothy's voice didn't rise. It lowered. The principal's weapon. We found it, Keith said. We took the risk. We went out there. So does Cole, every day. And he brings it back. Cole's a saint. I'm not a saint. I'm a guy who doesn't want to starve while a committee decides if I deserve dinner. The argument escalated. Not to violence. Lewis's presence prevented that, but to something worse. A philosophical fracture. Keith wasn't wrong that he'd taken the risk. Dorothy wasn't wrong that hoarding endangered everyone. Both positions were defensible. Neither was compatible with the other. By that evening, Keith and his group had moved to the north wing of the museum. They shared their warehouse supply with anyone who joined them. No rationing, eat what you want, but contribute to their runs or don't eat. 12 people migrated to his wing, then 15. We split. Not evenly, not cleanly, more like a cell dividing, leaving ragged edges. Dorothy's group, the museum proper, kept the generator, the medical supplies, the organized watch shifts. Keith's group had food abundance, but no infrastructure. For 2 days they coexisted, passing in hallways with the stiff avoidance of a divorce in a shared house. On day 9, a woman from Keith's group came to Claudia with a bite on her forearm. She'd been on a supply run, and an infected had grabbed her through a car window, Keith's group hadn't wanted to deal with it, hadn't wanted to acknowledge what a bite meant. Claudia examined it, cleaned it, wrapped it, then looked at the woman, a young teacher named Sarah, and said, "You know what this means." Sarah nodded. She wasn't crying yet. "How long?" "Based on what we've observed, 4 to 8 hours. What do I do?" No one had faced this inside the museum yet. Infected outside, yes. But one of us? Turning, inside the walls? Lewis stepped forward, his hand on the holster again. "Not yet," Claudia said sharply. "I'm not saying now. I'm saying we need to decide before it's not a decision anymore." Sarah looked between them. Her eyes were clear. Her arm was wrapped in white gauze that was already spotting through. She said, "I don't want to become that. I've seen them. I don't want to be that." The decision wasn't mine to make. It wasn't anyone's to make. But Sarah made it. She asked Lewis to walk with her to the loading dock. She asked for a few minutes alone outside. She walked out. Lewis followed. I heard the shot from inside the building. One, clean. Lewis came back alone. He didn't look at anyone. He went to the butterfly exhibit medical and sat on the floor behind the supply shelves and didn't come out for 6 hours. After that, Keith's group rejoined. The fracture healed not because the argument was resolved, but because the argument became irrelevant in the face of something neither position could answer. What do you do when the threat is already inside? When it's wearing the face of someone you ate lunch with yesterday? You hold together, not because it's right, because alone is worse. Day 12. Cole found the hole. He'd been pushing his scouting radius further each day west, always west, following the thinning pattern he'd identified. The infected pulled east toward the downtown mass. The western residential grid emptied like a bathtub, draining toward a low point. By day 12, Cole could walk a mile west and see nothing. He came back at midday, which was unusual. His runs normally lasted until late afternoon. He found me in the basement, checking generator fuel levels. "I found something," he said. He was breathing hard, not from exertion, from restraint. He was containing something. "What?" "The rail line. CSX tracks, running south out of the city. They cross the river on the railroad bridge, the one that's too narrow for vehicles. It's a mile west of the Lee Bridge." Military dropped the Lee Bridge. The Lee Bridge is a highway bridge. This is a rail bridge, single track, no road access. And Marcus, it's intact. I could see the other side. Is it patrolled? I watched it for 40 minutes. Nothing. No boats near it. No soldiers on it. It's 100 feet up. You can't reach it from the water. I think they forgot about it. Or they think nobody knows it's there. You think we can cross? I think we can try. Tonight, in the dark. Small group, quiet, fast. I stared at the fuel gauge on the generator. 2 days of power left. After that, dark, cold. No way to purify water. The museum's sustainability was a countdown, and we'd been watching it approach zero without a plan for what came after. How many? Everyone who can walk the distance. 4 miles to the bridge. Cross takes 10 minutes. Then we're out. Everyone is 73 people. I know. 73 people moving 4 miles in the dark through territory that's mostly clear but not guaranteed clear. That's not a small group. I didn't say small. I said everyone. Cole's logic was simple and brutal. The museum was dying. Food was almost gone. Keith's warehouse had been emptied. Generator was failing. The military was not coming to rescue us because we were not the priority. We were inside the container, and the container was meant to be a grave. The only option was to leave the container through the one gap in its walls. But 73 people, children from the soccer team, Mrs. Okafor was still in the law office downtown. But others like her. People who couldn't run. People who couldn't be silent. People who coughed, who panicked, who froze. If even one person made noise at the wrong moment, in the wrong place, the entire group would be exposed with no walls between them and whatever heard. I climbed back upstairs to the planetarium. The evening meeting was an hour away. I sat under the dome and stared at the ceiling that no longer projected stars and tried to calculate the mathematics of 73 people walking 4 miles in the dark. The mathematics said someone wouldn't make it. Not a possibility, a certainty. In a group that large, over that distance, in that environment, someone would fall behind. Someone would be too slow. Someone would make a noise. And when that happened, we would face the same choice I'd named on the rooftop of the parking garage on day 1. Leave them or die with them. I thought about Priya, walking alone into the dark 5 days ago. She'd chosen to face that equation by herself, betting only her own life. What Cole was proposing was betting everyone's life on the same gamble, together. But staying was also a bet. Staying was betting that the container would be opened before the container killed us. And that bet was losing. I told Cole I'd support it at the meeting. He nodded. Then he said something I didn't expect. You know some of us won't make it. I know. Do you know what we do when that happens? We keep going. Can you? I thought about the woman in scrubs on Broad Street. The car in reverse. The question I'd been asking myself every day since. Would I stop? I don't know, I said. But I won't go backward. The meeting lasted 2 hours. The longest we'd ever argued. Cole presented the route. The railroad bridge. The gap in the patrol. He showed his hand-drawn map elevations, sight lines, the thinning pattern of infected, the narrow corridor that would take us from the museum south and west to the rail yard. Lewis asked the hard question, what about the people who can't keep pace? Everyone walks together, Cole said. We move at the speed of the slowest. That's a death sentence for the fastest if something goes wrong. Breaking into groups in the dark is a death sentence for whoever gets lost. Hank, do we have any confirmation the other side is safe? No, but the other side isn't inside a quarantine that's designed to let us die. Gerald, still in his suit remarkably, though the tie was gone and the jacket was stained, said, I watched a military convoy pass beneath me on day 1. They didn't look up. They didn't see us. If their attention is on the highways and the river, a railroad bridge at 2 a.m. might be exactly the kind of thing they'd miss. Dorothy. When? Tonight, Cole said. Midnight. We walk in a column. No lights, no talking. If we encounter infected on the road, we divert. I have 3 alternate paths marked. If we encounter more than we can silently pass, we shelter in the nearest building and try again tomorrow night. And the bridge itself? Single file. It's narrow, maybe 6 feet across with railings, 100 feet above the water. If you're afraid of heights, close your eyes and hold the railing. Don't look down. The vote wasn't formal. We weren't a democracy in any structural sense. But Hank asked who was willing, and hands went up. 61 of the 73. The remaining 12 chose to stay, some too scared of the route, some too physically compromised, some simply unable to believe that the government would truly let them die and still waiting for the rescue that the first night's faith had promised. We couldn't make them come. We couldn't make them believe what they weren't ready to believe. At 11:30 p.m., we gathered at the loading dock. Dark clothing, soft shoes were available. Some people wrapped their feet in fabric torn from exhibit banners. No bags that would swing or rustle. Water in pockets, nothing else. Cole led, Lewis in the rear with his weapon. I was in the middle, near the soccer kids, 7 of them, ages 12 to 14. The coach's hand on the shoulder of the smallest. Wallace was near the back. Gerald was ahead of me. The door opened. The night was cool and clear as stars visible for the first time since arriving at the museum. The light pollution of a dead city, unable to compete with the sky. We moved. The first mile was residential. Row houses dark on both sides, porches with jack-o'-lanterns from September displays rotting on the steps. A dog collar hanging from a fence, no dog attached. Our feet on the sidewalk made soft sounds, shuffles, the quiet pad of wrapped soles. 61 people walking in the dark. At the end of the first mile, Cole stopped the column with a raised hand passed back person to person. We waited. A single infected stood at a cross-street intersection 30 yards ahead, motionless, facing away from us. Cole circled us wide. 1 block south, then west again, then back to the route. The detour added 5 minutes, and some of the soccer kids were shaking when we resumed. Their coach whispered something to them, I couldn't hear what, and they steadied. Mile 2. The houses gave way to commercial, a strip mall, a gas station, a church with its doors hanging open. The streets were wider here. More sight lines, more visibility. I could see further in every direction, which meant anything in those directions could see us. 2 infected, then 3, moving east on a parallel road, visible between buildings in the gap of an alley. They didn't turn. They didn't hear us. 61 people holding their breath in unison. And somehow, the night kept the sound. Mile 3. The rail yard appeared as a darkness deeper than the surrounding dark, a void where no streetlights stood and no buildings reflected the moon. Chain-link fence with a gap where someone had cut it, Cole's work from earlier that day. Through the gap, onto the gravel between the rails. The crunching was deafening after the quiet of our walk. Every footstep on the ballast stones sounded like breaking glass. People winced. The coach lifted the smallest soccer player and carried him to muffle 1 set of feet. And then, the bridge. It emerged from the rail yard like a spine, a truss bridge, iron and steel, stretching out over blackness. Below, the James River moved in the dark, invisible except for the occasional reflection of starlight on current. The far side was a shadow trees, embankment, the absence of city. Cole turned to face the column. In the dark, his face was just angles and shadows. He didn't speak. He pointed forward. Then he turned and stepped onto the bridge. 1 by 1, single file, hands on the railing. The bridge hummed with our weight, a low vibration that I felt through the metal under my feet. The planks between the rails were spaced with gaps you could see the water below if you looked down. I didn't look down. 40 feet out, 60, the halfway point. The city was behind us now, its dark skyline a jagged line against the stars. Ahead, the south bank. Trees, earth, the outside of the container. A sound from behind. Somewhere in the rail yard we'd just left. A gravel crunch that wasn't one of us too heavy, too arrhythmic. Then another. Then several. They'd found our trail. The gravel, our scent on the gravel. Or the sound we'd made crossing it. I don't know which sense drew them. But they were in the rail yard now, moving toward the bridge. "Keep moving," Lewis said from the rear. His voice was low but carrying. "Don't run. Don't stop. Keep the same pace." The bridge was 300 yards. We'd crossed maybe half, 150 yards of open bridge between us and the other side, with infected entering the rail yard behind us and the narrow span offering no escape except forward. People ahead of me sped up. The spacing compressed. Someone stumbled. I heard a gasp and the sound of hands grabbing metal railing. Gerald's voice. "I've got you. Keep going." Behind, Lewis's silhouette was the last on the bridge. Beyond him, in the rail yard, movement. 5 figures moving onto the bridge's approach. The first one stepped onto the rails. Lewis drew his weapon. The sound of the slide was distinct, even over the river noise. Below. "Don't," someone hissed. "Sound will draw more. If they reach us on this bridge, the sound won't matter." The gap was closing. They moved faster on the bridge than on gravel. The flat surface gave them purchase. 60 yards behind Lewis and gaining. I couldn't see the front of the column, too many bodies between me and Cole. But I could feel the acceleration. People were running now, not sprinting a contained run, hands sliding on the railing, feet finding the ties between gaps. The soccer kids were fast. The coach carried one and the others ran with the natural speed of children unburdened, low center of gravity, fearless in the way that only ignorance of consequence allows. Wallace was not fast. I could hear him behind me, his breathing, his heavy footfalls. I slowed. "Don't," he said. "I told you. No guilt. Shut up and run." He ran. We ran together, not fast enough, but faster than we'd been walking. The bridge was singing under all our feet, a sustained metallic tone like a tuning fork. The south bank was close now. I could see the embankment, the trees, ground. Lewis fired, one shot. The sound cracked across the river valley like a physical blow. My ears rang. Behind us, the first pursuer dropped. I saw it fold at the bridge railing and go sideways, vanishing over the edge into the dark below. The others didn't stop. They didn't react to the shot the way living things would. They just kept coming. Lewis fired again. Again. 3 more shots, 3 more shapes disrupted. Whether killed or knocked off the bridge, I couldn't tell. But the gap held. Then we were off. Off the bridge. Onto gravel, then dirt, then grass. The south bank, the other side. People collapsed. People kept running. People stood at the end of the bridge and watched Lewis come across last. Walking backward, weapon raised, watching the bridge behind him. No more came. The ones he'd stopped had been the only pursuers. The bridge stretched empty and dark behind us, and on the far end, the rail yard held shadows that moved but didn't follow. 61 people. I counted. 61 made it across. All of us. We walked until dawn, away from the river, away from the bridge, into suburbs that were quiet and dark, but not dead houses, with curtains that twitched, with lights behind closed doors, with the sound of a radio playing through a kitchen window. The military found us at 6 a.m. A patrol that came around a corner and stopped at the sight of 61 people walking down a residential street in the early morning light, filthy and exhausted and alive. They didn't shoot. They asked questions. They separated us. They gave us water and silver blankets and wrote our names on clipboards and asked how we'd gotten out. I don't know what happened to the 12 who stayed in the museum. I don't know what happened to Dion. I don't know what happened to Ray and Sean and Britt and Elena and Tamara and Mrs. Okafor in the law office on the 4th floor. I know that on the first day, I put my car in reverse. And on the last night, I slowed down for Wallace on a bridge while the dead gained ground behind us. I don't know if that balances. I don't think it works that way. But I think of the people I passed through, the ones who held doors, who drew maps, who carried children, who fired last so others could run first, the ones whose names I barely knew and whose decisions kept me alive. There's a debt in that. Not guilt debt. The kind you pay forward because you can never pay it back. Every day I'm on this side of the river is a day borrowed from strangers who had no reason to help me, except that I was there. And they were there, and going alone was worse. That's what I carry. That's what it cost.